Hello! It's nice to see you on this off week where we usually don't stream. We're here to talk about the future of Foxhole and what's to come in this special announcement stream. I think it's pretty cool and exciting. And you guys probably think it's cool and exciting.
Yeah. And for people who don't usually watch our stream, maybe we can talk about who we are.
Yeah, so that's right. I forgot to introduce myself. And
how rude, Matt.
Usually I do. It's weird. It's an off week. Okay. My name is Matt. This is HB, and this is Mark. We're developers in Foxhole. You couldn't figure that out.
If you're here, you probably know, but maybe there's a couple of people here that don't know. So.
Exactly. So I think we're going to be deep diving into what really is going to be the future of the game, and trying to be transparent with you guys and let you know what we're working on. So with that, I don't want to waste any more time. So Mark, do you want to kind of start to take it away?
Sure, yeah. So we are going to talk about some big changes that are coming to the game today. But before we talk about those changes, I thought this was a good time for us to sort of talk to you guys about what our goals are as a team. And really, since we started working on this project, we've really been shooting to make the ultimate version of a persistent war game.
Mm-hmm.
Game where wars last for a long time. You're working with lots of players, and this really started about 2 years ago when it was just a concept in our mind. It was just like the whole concept was just probably like a few scribbles on a piece of paper, and then from there we built a prototype for half a year. We launched that into the combat prototype about a year and a half ago. And it was crazy. We launched it. There was only like 5 people in the world, and they're like, hey, this is kind of cool. I can kind of shoot and like walk around. And then from there, we expanded that out into like open world. We had a lot more players playing the game. They were only coming on the weekends for the most part, but there was kind of enough there to have somewhat of a war. And then eventually the community got a lot larger. We launched into Steam early access about half a year ago, and we got a lot more players, and now we have like hundreds of players that are playing the game constantly. And as you'll see after some of the stuff we talked about today, we're going to be working on some huge changes to the game, right? And we're going to be working on that for months, and in the next year we're going to be working on a lot of stuff for Foxhole to try to bring it to the ultimate persistent war game. And then I'd imagine that many years from now, this is our goal if everything works out right. It's a crazy goal, but our hope is that in many years from now, you guys are playing some version of this type of game where you're literally in like a single shard world with like thousands of players, and it's just this really crazy war, right? And the reason why I'm talking about this is because I think it helps to understand why we do the things that we do. It's not about a standalone game. It's not about we launched this game and it was a success and now we're happy because like we made a bunch of money, right? It's important because this is something that we want to do for a very long time, right? And everything we do is a step that is going towards that, and the changes that we're going to be talking about today to Foxhole are ultimately going to be towards that goal.
Yep.
Now that that's out of the way, maybe I can actually start talking about some of the changes
what we came here for.
It's like weirdly emotional to hear you like break it down like that. It's like we've come a long way from Fortified, which was our last game, to what we're working on now is like a really crazy trajectory.
And it's going to get much more crazy.
It's going to get crazier.
It's going to get much more crazy.
So what is it that is the whole thing that we're talking today?
So sorry for keeping you guys waiting for like a whole week, but we really wanted this to be a little bit of a special thing. So Matt, I guess we're just going to jump into talking about the big changes that are coming. So we want to switch over to... So it's going to be the World Revamp. That's what we're calling it. It's going to be a big change that is coming to the game, and it's going to take place over several updates. And the goal for this is to bring Foxhole much closer to the vision of one persistent world. This was the first vision that we had for the game, and due to circumstances, resource constraints, we kind of had to build the game a certain way, just so that we can keep the ball rolling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe not all the choices were the right choices, but ultimately we had to make the choice at every point in the journey to like try to get as close as we can. But sometimes it wasn't a straightforward thing, right? We are literally operating on like, since we started this a year and a half ago, I realized that like we're literally operating on these. First it was one update every week, and then it was one update every 2 weeks, and then now it's one update every 3 weeks. Yeah, do you remember those days?
No, I actually don't. I forgot we were doing one
update. We haven't missed a single update for the most part, and it's just been this ball that's been rolling and it hasn't stopped, right? It's like this train that's going, and we're kind of like placing the tracks down on the road while the train's moving. So very few times have we been able to kind of stop and rethink about things and be like, hey, are we really going in the right direction? Like maybe we need to make some larger changes, right? So now we're thinking about doing these larger changes, and really the goals that we have is, the first one there, we want the wars to be longer, right? We want it to feel like you're actually working with hundreds of players all at the same time in a single world, in a single war, right?
Yep.
And that the strategies that you're planning are not so short-sighted, right? Not like, what are we doing in like the next hour, right? It should be like, what are we doing in the next day or two, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the goals that we have. The progression, we want to make sure that you feel like things are changing over time, not just within like the next couple of hours. We want you to feel like you can go into the game, you can do something, and then when you leave, you've made some sort of a permanent change in the war, right? It's gonna affect what's gonna happen in the coming days, not just like short term, right? And finally, we want to make sure that there is like a sense of accomplishment, a sense of meaning, that if you win the war, it matters. It's a high stakes war, and it really matters what you're doing, right? And when you come out of it, you can talk about these wars like a story, because it mattered more. It wasn't just like one war of like 5 that are currently happening, right? It's just one, and it's just like, you'll be like, hey, do you remember that one war?
Mm-hmm. Everybody at least participated.
Everybody's talking about the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So it actually mattered, right? These are the things that we found really cool about this concept. And while we've been taking steps towards capturing some of this, and we have captured much of this, really, we're kind of a little far off from it,
yep,
if I have to be honest, right? So we have a video to show that is just gonna show you how we think a war should look like once all these changes we're planning to make are complete. So Matt, if you wanna show this video.
Yeah, do you wanna mute that?
Cool, so hope you like that video. So what the One World Revamp is going to be is a massive restructuring of the game, right? So we're going to take all the game modes of the game, and we're gonna make sure that they all combine into a single war,
yep,
right? Every player is going to be playing in the same war at the same time, and everyone's going to be working towards the same goal. You will be working with hundreds of players, right? And I want to go back really quickly before we dive into the further details to just walk through some of what happened in the video. Really, it's showing what we want the progression of the war to look like once all these changes are made. And it's important to note that this is a sample of what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
We don't expect every war to look exactly like this. Some wars will be longer, some wars will be shorter, and the progression might look like something different. But just to start walking through this, in the first 2 days of the war, we expect there to be a preparation phase where players are playing. First of all, players start in the home region always, right? And the home region is part of the persistent world, and we expect that in the first 2 days, players will be playing in the home region. They'll be playing in the skirmishes, which we'll talk more about later. And the skirmishes, in turn, are going to help each of the factions have a buildup of forces that are in the home region, right? So they'll be building fleets, they'll be building weapons, they'll be building vehicles, and they'll be doing more things there too. And then once the preparation phase is complete, that's when the conquest happens. And at that point, what we expect is that players are going to use the build-up. They're going to enter the mainland where the conquest happens. And then from that point forward, the mainland is going to be contested. And that's going to last for a certain amount of time. And as you can see during this time, the skirmish instances are still happening. The skirmish battles are still happening. And they're going to continue to support the war effort by supplying the home regions, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about that more later. And one important thing to note, that while all this is happening, there's going to be a technology tree that exists at the home region. So all these players are going to be working towards a single technology tree where they're going to be able to choose which technologies that they want to use next, right? And all the skirmishes and all the fighting on the mainland is going to contribute to this. So it's going to be a progression of a technology tree that happens over the span of many days, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be a little bit of a mountain goal there that you haven't seen in Foxhole yet. Usually in Foxhole, everything happens all at once, and maybe in like 10 to 12 hours, you'll have tanks. But it's something where if you want tanks, it's going to take a few days to get there, right? So you're going to be unlocking things in the tech tree. And then the next thing I want to point out, that at any point, players in the home region can build a fleet and send it to the coastal region. So even if your back is up against the wall, you'll still be able to make some sort of a comeback by sending a fleet over to the mainland. And finally, in the final stages of the war, one side will win when the regions are all claimed by one side. And that's kind of how we sort of see the progression of the war happening once the World Revamp is done.
Yeah.
And now I guess we can talk a little bit more about the finer details of what's happening here.
What is each thing?
Matt, I'll leave it to you to... actually, there's one thing
a whole
before
section.
I jumped the gun. I did want to talk a little bit first about some of the restructuring that we're going to be seeing with Foxhole at a high level. So one thing, there's going to be no server browser anymore, right? You're going to choose your faction or your character, and then you're going to enter the game, and you're going to enter the home region, and then from that point forward, that's where your game starts, right? So the server browser is going to be gone. Because again, you're entering the home region of one single world, right? There's going to be no campaign mode, right? Because the campaign mode itself sort of like implies these like separate worlds that are happening, but we want to combine them all into one world, right? There will be two ways that you can participate in the same war. One is skirmish mode, and one is the conquest, right? Skirmish mode is smaller scale wars that or kind of like, not wars, but smaller battles that take place on smaller maps, right? And they will contribute back to the main war. And then there's the conquest, and this plays out very similar to how the World Conquest played, with a bunch of changes. The World Conquest that we tested out back in the pre-alpha days, right? And both modes will tie back into the same persistent war, right? And finally, we don't have as much to say about this now, but there will be a player progression, and you'll have lasting effects on both the player and faction, right? Hopefully we'll be able to talk about
See
that
that because the camera's in the way, but
okay.
but yeah.
There will be player progression.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Matt, now I can hand it off to you.
Yeah, okay, so let's talk about the home regions for a second. You guys have seen the lobbies that we have now, and that's sort of like a starting point for the home regions. The home regions will likely be different, but the idea is similar. It's a place where your team can gather safely. It's friendly only. There won't be any enemies there. And in particular, the home region will be different than the lobby in that you won't have all separate teams in the same server. This will be a server specifically for your team. Do you want to go to the next one?
Yeah.
So it acts like a hub world. So there's a way to get to your skirmishes and to your conquest regions. So you can travel to skirmishes, which skirmishes will help you out, which we'll talk about a little bit more in the actual main conquest war. And you can take, I think the general idea is you can take boats to the shore regions, or if you have, can you go to the next slide, I think? Or if you have, I guess that's not it. Was there not a slide that's, anyway, whatever.
Yeah.
You can travel to regions that are taken by your faction, and you'll go to the hometown. Or if the enemy has a region, you actually have to travel there physically from one of your faction's regions. So you have to walk and travel and then take that region if you want to invade. There will also be a training grounds, much like you see now in the lobby. And it's a place to practice techniques and teach new players and just practice different strategies. And you can support the war effort from the home region by producing, doing logistics, doing technology stuff, and all of that will feed back into the world conquest, as well as building special structures that wouldn't be in the actual mainland. I think that's pretty much covers everything.
Cool.
Is there anything that you want to add?
Not too much actually. Yeah.
So I know that this is something that you guys have wanted to see for a really long time, and this is a concept for the world as sort of we know it in the game. This is concept art, so all concept art, things could change, things could be a little bit different when they actually come into the game. But we wanted to specifically build this out and show it to you guys and say, this is something that we've been talking about for a long time. This is a lot of stuff that I've thought about for a really long time in terms of the different locations in the world and what they mean to the actual war effort. So we're gonna give you guys this to look at in more detail later, but that's pretty much all I want to say. A little bit of a tease. You guys can look at it and kind of figure out some of your own details.
Yeah, I think one of the important reasons why we're showing this map now is because with the home regions, with the skirmish battles, they're going to take place in the larger world, right?
Yeah, they're not going to take place in the mainland.
Yeah. So the maps you see now are part of the mainland. That's going to be the conquest, and a lot of the other parts of the world that you see here are going to be for the skirmishes, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
Right.
So let's talk about World Conquest.
Yeah.
World Conquest is, if you were here early on, it's really similar to the basic idea of World Conquest that we had. There's a 3x3 grid in the mainland. Players will spawn at their hometown, and this is the slide I was looking for. Players can spawn at their hometown in a contested region, or they can come from their home region, and so basically hundreds of players will be competing in the mainland. You can travel across the whole zone by foot if you want, as long as, of course, you don't. Well, you could do it as a single player, I suppose, right?
As long as no one kills you.
As long as no one kills you, I suppose.
And if you have no town halls, or if your region is not actually contested yet, that is the only way for you to actually access a region that doesn't have a town hall of your side.
So say the colonials have far enough coast, if you're wardens, you're actually going to have to walk in there and start taking towns.
Right.
And they have to defend it. So, you want to go to the next slide? So technology. I think this is probably one of the coolest things that's changing a little bit is the technology center in the home region will allow you to research and contribute to the ongoing war by obtaining blueprints, and those blueprints can then be sent out into the mainland to actually give more resources to the different structures in the mainland, like your factories and your vehicle factories and all that stuff, your armories and your vehicle factories and all that stuff. So instead of just putting tech points in buildings randomly, you're going to actually research most of your stuff in your home region. You can produce stuff in your home region, but you can also send blueprints out into the mainland.
And the interesting thing I think about the blueprints is that because they're actually carried, you can steal blueprints from the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
if you ambush a truck that is carrying these blueprints to a vehicle factory, and it has like the colonial tank, and you're playing as a warden, you can steal the blueprints for the colonial tank, and then you can build that colonial tank, which I thought is a pretty cool thing.
Yep.
Right?
And if you take over a colonial weapon vehicle factory, you're going to have access to the colonial vehicles.
That's right.
And
So
you can take it. So
the technology is going to be very valuable in this game because it takes a long time to actually get the blueprints, right? To get to that point in the tree. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think one of the things that we really want is that we felt was always lacking is a progression over the long run, right? Things changing a lot after a war has been going on for like a few days, right?
yeah.
Right now it's very shallow. You kind of play in this war, and everything that needs to happen happens in like a day or so, and then you just kind of from there it's just like a grind, right? It's just like people are spamming much of the same things, right? But there's nothing significant happening. I think with this system we'd be able to support things such as something that's sitting far along in the technology tree, like something like a super weapon, and it literally takes you a whole week before you reach that super weapon, and now you got that super weapon. But if you lose the blueprints to that super weapon, then the other side has that super weapon,
Which is
right?
awesome.
So that's the kind of stuff that we want to see happening, right? And that presents a scenario where so many things can possibly happen, and the stakes are really high at that point, right? So.
And yeah, so the final thing is there will be more details going forward. We will be talking about and showing more stuff in the coming weeks about the specifics of Conquest. So, we're just kind of like unveiling it, talking about what we're actually going to do, and we have.
Yeah, there's a lot of
more details too.
There's a lot of more parts that we need to spend a lot more time to talk about, but we didn't want to be here for like 2 hours today. I'm sure you guys don't want to either, so we decided to sort of just talk about the higher level points of what's going to be changing. And
so can we show the technology center? Yeah. So
cool.
These are concepts. Do you want to?
Yeah.
That? These are concepts for the technology center. This is really early still. Just kind of some ideas we're exploring. It's meant to be more of like a. I don't know. Do you want to speak to it in terms of like the design?
Yeah, I think we're still at like the exploratory phase about the visuals of this. I think in terms of how it's going to work, that's much more settled. But each of the home regions will have a single technology center, and you're going to be going to it a lot, right? Because as we'll be talking about, you'll be getting your technology parts, which you're going to be submitting into this structure. You're going to be getting from both the skirmish and playing the conquest. So you're going to be constantly coming back to the structure, constantly looking at it and seeing where you're at. Your entire team is going to be looking at it and seeing where you're at. So when you finally get to something like tanks, it's going to be a huge deal, right? It's going to be something that everyone's waiting for, right? Skirmishes.
So skirmishes, like we talked about earlier, skirmishes are going to be now more of an important part of the war. And skirmishes specifically are intended to be a couple of things: shorter battles. They take place on smaller maps, are more balanced and in terms of the level design, as opposed to sort of our traditional style of these asymmetrical maps, which sort of are more themed around the entire world. These maps will be standalone. The other thing is they will support conquest. So you will get supply drops to the home region. They will have technology and other things that will help to support the war effort. So they're important. You're going to want to do them. And also, if you want to go to the next slide, there's a couple reasons. What if the world conquest is like maybe the servers, there's not enough room, or there's something going on where like there's a ton of players playing and you can't just jump into a conquest server, or maybe there's a stalemate going on and it's not something you're interested in solving. Well, you can go and play in a skirmish map and still help your team maybe get out of that stalemate. If you just want to jump in for like an hour, this is probably the perfect place to do it. If you are, I guess I said in a queue, then you can also play while you're waiting in a queue. So you can go to a skirmish while you're waiting to queue into the conquest. So and still be helping the war. And I think that's important. You're always feeding back into conquest.
I think it's interesting to notice the main difference in here for why we're doing this is that we have only one war, but the skirmishes still can happen in 7 different ways. You can have more than one kind of skirmish happening in the same map, but different instances. But they will still all supply the same war. So we can have people think, oh, I want to have my own small war with like my friends. In a way, you can jump into a skirmish, which is a small affair, and that will still help, even though it's a different kind of gameplay. It's something different that in the way we expect people to play. We're always saying, oh, we want you to play for 7-8 hours a day. It's like, no, if you want to play for 2 hours, you can still do it. You're gonna do it in a skirmish. But the cool part is that even when you're only doing a skirmish, you're still helping the large effort, and it's still only one war effort.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And I guess that's kind of like all the details we wanted to talk about in terms of the revamp, and just kind of wanted to like summarize on this, like really what this is the next couple of months. The next couple of months is we want to transform the game, right? We want to transform the game into something that we feel like we promised, right? We feel like we're gonna do what we said that we would do at the beginning, right? Which is to get hundreds of players into a single persistent war, and everything of these changes is going to work towards that. And I guess in terms of a little bit about the schedule, right?
Yeah,
just a little bit.
Yeah. Well, Mark mentioned that we are working on we are working on this, and we're thinking, oh, we want to do this huge revamp. But that doesn't mean that we are not gonna continue working on the rest of the game as well. So because of that, because we don't want to drop everything and just do this, and because we want to make sure that this comes out in the best way possible,
and because it's a lot of work.
And it's a lot of work. This is gonna be rolled out in several different updates. Each update is gonna be building up to the final ideal one world update. So you're gonna have one now in December, one in January, one in February, and each one of them is gonna bring different parts. You guys are gonna see changes for this one world giant update revamp. And the thing is, when we bring those updates, it's not gonna just be that. For instance, we have right now more news coming soon, because right now in December 14, we have an update already. So it's not like we are dropping things, we are making sure that our updates keep going on. And in this update on December 14 is what we call the communication update. You guys are gonna see our roster of new features dealing with how players see information and communication with each other.
A lot of huge changes, actually. Even just on its own is going to be huge.
That's the whole idea. Like we don't want to just focus on that one as well, because otherwise people might be wanting the game continues. So we have these updates. The next one is on December 14, as I said, which brings on its own a bunch of new features. Yeah. But as these updates come up, you might start seeing changes to the core game to accommodate to the one world revamp.
So I think another reason why we're talking about this update now is because we really want to make sure that we're not just like talking, right?
Yeah.
That we're putting this whole plan into action, and you're going to be seeing parts of it as soon as next week, right? Like the home region, in a very basic form, we're shooting to get that into this next update. So even that whole experience is going to change. And we're jumping right into it. We're not waiting. It's not going to be like, months ago when we talked about World Conquest, it's just like a pie in the sky thing happening.
This is happening now.
This is happening now. This is happening next week. It's starting, and we hope that over the next couple of months, we're going to see a lot more of it. And I guess I jumped the gun on the slide a bit, HB, but this kind of just brings us to the last point, is that there's still so much that we have to say about this. And I know you guys have a lot of questions about it, so we're hoping that in the Devstream that is coming up next week, we can answer a bunch of those questions because there's just so many parts to this revamp.
And I'm sure you guys are gonna find lots and lots of issues that you might have that, and we are gonna be okay. We're gonna answer all those.
Well, I think another thing that I think is important that to mention so that we're on the same page about, right, is that in order to get one of the reasons why we haven't done this yet, right, is because there's a lot of risk involved, right? Like people could hate this. Like a lot of people could hate some of the changes that we're making. They're gonna make a lot of noise about it, about why they hate certain things, and because a lot of people are just not comfortable with that kind of change, and
especially sweeping changes like these.
Sweeping changes, it's also gonna introduce probably more problems at first than it solves, and just on the technical side, there's probably going to be like a lot of bugs, right, at the beginning, but it's one of those things where, like, if you feel that this is where the game should go, right, then there needs to be, it'll be helpful if there was some like patience there as we work through this, right, because a lot of times studios that work on games don't make changes like this because it's scary. Like, you don't want to lose what you have, right? Like, everything's going fine and, like, you know, studios making money or whatever, we're having sales, there's players playing the game, but, like, you don't want to lose that. If you make a big change, you might lose it all, right? But we feel like this is important enough in the longer run, in the context of the longer goals, that that we got to take these kind of risks. But with these risks, if you want to help out, just kind of make sure that over the next while that you help to like communicate what we're trying to do here, and help like communicate to the other community members that, like, yeah, there are going to be changes, not everyone's going to like them, there may be problems at first, but hopefully when we come through all those changes, the game is going to be much better. It's going to be way better than what it is right now, and
I hope you guys understand why we decided to do this like extra dev stream. It is it's because we are really excited about this. Like this is the final the image that we had for our game. Ever since the very beginning, we always wanted for everything to be meaningful. Every single skirmish that you have to be meaningful. Every single combat that you have to be meaningful. Your actions are part of one large war that is going to be passed down through other players for long period of time. So for us, this is more important right now than the possibility of people not liking it, because we truly believe that this is the best option for our game. We think that it is something that is not done on other games, and I think we have a huge potential in here to provide that for you guys. I hope you guys are as excited as we are, because we really are, and that's why for us this is scary as well, because we know that there's gonna be people that are gonna hate it, but we are committed to this. There might be problems in the beginning, as Mark said, but we are committed to also working through them and making sure that these problems are squashed. It's gonna take, again, it's not gonna be only one update, it's gonna be 2, 3, 4 updates maybe, but we are moving through this, and as the problems come up, we will fix them. We will make sure that it's a great experience for you guys, because that's the vision that we have for the game.
Cool.
I hope you guys are excited.
Awesome. And if you guys have questions, keep them for next week. Ask them on the Discord, on the Reddit, and hopefully we will be able to answer them as time comes up. Unfortunately, we won't be doing a Q&A today. This was a special stream just to announce this. So
there will be a dev stream though, just like it always is next week.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
what
same time,
the
same channel next week, next
December
whatever day.
But if you guys want to talk about the changes, I think I got to confirm, but I think there's a community stream on Thursday.
Oh yes,
it might be a good place if you want to talk about
it. Is there a community stream? Well, even if there isn't a community stream, I think that's it. Go check their stream out this week or next week or whenever their stream is, and they will likely be talking about it.
So yeah.
But ask questions on Discord. Keep your questions handy for next week. Talk about it on Reddit, and hopefully all your questions will be answered before this stuff starts rolling out.
And if you are seeing this on YouTube, join us on December 12th on Twitch, twitch.tv/foxhole game. And then you guys can also, if you're curious about this and have questions, also ask questions for us then, December 12th.
Sounds good. Awesome.
See you guys next week.
Thank you
Thank you,
very
guys.
much for all this. Have a good one.